Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about shopping for vintage Chanel classic flap bags. Yes, this is a very specific video and I'm hoping that the tips and tricks that I share will be helpful for those of you who are on the market. So this is my one and only vintage Chanel. It is a 6 series and it's a black lambskin medium size with the flat CC hardware, which is kind of special because Chanel only produced the flat CC hardware for a few of the years, so it's not common. And I just love this combination. I feel like it's very fresh with the silver, a little bit more youthful looking. I think that the gold hardware with the 24K plating is also amazing. That's kind of what's special about these vintage Chanel bags. The 24K gold plating, they don't do that anymore. I did get a bag for my mom actually that has that 24K gold and the black caviar, but I feel like the gold is a little too yellow, a little too saturated for my liking, so it's a matter of preference. But this is the exact combination that I had been looking for. You guys know really quickly, I'll just sum up that I purchased 2 Chanel classic flap bags, black caviar, silver hardware, both from the boutique a few years ago, and unfortunately both had to go back because of defects, and then the prices kept going up and I was getting pretty frustrated. So that is what kicked off my search on the Preloved market, and I did pick this up from Fashion File. At the time, this was listed in very good condition. Now, this was back in either 2018 or 2019, so it's been about 4 or 5 years. A lot of things have changed on Fashion File. I still think they have a lot to offer, but their condition terms have changed and their refund policy has changed, and I did a whole in-depth video, kind of like an investigative report, in my most recent video, so if you missed it, I'll link it up above. So I'm going to give you the details on this bag as we talk, and I'll give you more eye candy, but I want to share with you the specific things that I look for when hunting for vintage Chanel, this one in particular. So the very first thing is authenticity. There are so many scammers out there and there's a lot of super fakes out there, so to see that Fashion File has a lifetime guarantee of authenticity gave me a great level of peace of mind at the time. And by the way, if you make an order and you're a little bit suspicious or you're just nervous, you can absolutely enlist a third party to authenticate it for you so that you know there's like double, triple layer of reassurance. So even though Fashion File does, or maybe other sites, Rebag and others, they have authenticity guarantees, if you want to get an outside opinion, absolutely, I highly recommend that you do that. I have used the leather surgeons in the past and I found them to be great. And there's also Zico authentication on Instagram. I think you send in some photos and they can hopefully quickly turn it around for you. So authenticity is #1 priority because you don't want to be basically suckered into buying a fake bag. And when I say authenticity, I'm also talking you check for the basic qualifiers, okay? So for example, examine the bag, examine the photos of what you're buying, and make sure that it looks like an authentic bag as much as you can tell from your eye. And also what I did was, since this is a vintage, it has the serial sticker. The newer bags starting 2021 have the serial numbers on a chip that's sort of like a plate that's almost attached or implanted to the bag. But the older bags have the serial sticker attached. You see right there? And so sometimes the bags have serial stickers falling off, half falling off, or completely off. And that's not necessarily an indicator that the bag is fake, but I personally wanted my serial sticker on so that I could have a little bit of that extra peace of mind knowing that there is a serial sticker attached and it should be a unique code just for this bag. And then I'm covering most of the serial sticker because again, it's a unique number and you don't really want it being shared. So the first number there, it says 6. So this is a 6 series bag, which tells me that it was produced in the years 2000 to 2002, okay? That's kind of like the serial number will tell you that. Same thing with the serial numbers on the chips on the newer bags. So I wanted the authenticity card as well. That was a condition of mine. And then you match up the serial sticker with the authenticity card because there's all kinds of crazy situations where the sticker doesn't match, which means that something's off, right? So things like that. And if it does come with other things like a receipt, although you'll not find that on sites like Fashion File, but maybe from direct resellers on eBay or Poshmark, you might be able to get the original receipt. That's always helpful. And if you get a dust bag and box, if you have other Chanel items, you might be able to tell if that dust bag and box are authentic because believe it or not, there are fake bags, dust bags, and boxes out there too. It's crazy. There's a whole market. So authenticity is number one, and try to verify to at least a basic level the authenticity yourself. And then I do recommend having a third party look at your bag as well. So that's the first thing. Then I look at structure. Yeah, my eyes go straight to structure. So it doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be perfect in your eyes. So especially for a classic flat bag, I wanted it to be in good form. You know, the sides kind of dent in like this. That's normal. It is straight on the bottom, curved up here, not wonky, not crooked. The grommets are pretty much symmetrical. You've got the CC hardware centered. The reason why I say structure is because if the bag structure has been damaged, what the leather repair people have to do is they have to deconstruct the entire bag. And inside here is some like harder material that forms the structure of the bag. I know it's shocking, but yes, even these luxury bags have like stuff inside, like I don't know if it's cardboard or something. So there's a base inside that has to be taken out and either, you know, repaired, or a new one has to be put back in. And so they have to deconstruct the entire bag and then reconstruct it. So when you do that, it really does mess with the original integrity of the bag. So structure is huge. So I needed, for me at least, and everyone's going to have their own preferences, but for me, I needed the structure to be in excellent condition. And then symmetry is the other thing. I want the bag to stand on its own. So when you put it down on its base, there's no creasing, bending, tilting. You put it down and it sits. It doesn't flop over. I wanted that as well. So you can't really tell that from photos, but if you zoom in and examine the photos well enough, you might be able to see if there's a problem. Like if there's, you know, sometimes one side is crushed. Yes, I've seen bags like that. And you know, in those cases, they're definitely not going to stand on their own. So you can kind of guesstimate. So there is the symmetry. And then big one, which is a problem if it's not listed, is odors. I am super sensitive to odors, and I want my bags to smell like the way they're supposed to smell. For lambskin leather bags, I want it to smell like leather. It doesn't matter if it's vintage pre-owned, it should smell like leather, not someone's closet, not cigarettes, not food. That's gross. It's disgusting. So this, even though it's over 20 years old, someone else owned it prior to me, and I've had it for about 5 years. When I sniff this, yes, I'm a leather sniffer, it smells like leather. That's it. It's gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. So odors, check for that for sure. Hopefully the listings will be accurate and mention the odors. But when you get a bag and it just stinks, don't hesitate to return it, because a lot of odors just don't come out, especially cigarette odor, from what I understand, is notoriously hard to get out. And that just is disgusting to me. So that's a deal breaker. And then also stains. Like look around now. This is a black bag, so obviously there's not going to be like staining that's visible. And I also did a clean down when I purchased this. But if it's a lighter bag, look for stains, you know, marks. If there's like a tiny little pen mark on the inside of the bag, does that matter to you? Is that a deal breaker? Do you care because no one's going to see it? Is there a little mark on the flap on the inside that's like a tiny smudge? Do you mind about that? But is there a stain right on the center of the bag on the front? That's going to mark down the price. It should. That's pretty significant. So look for stains. And the other thing I look for is hardware. So hardware needs to be attached completely. I look for also tarnish. So I zoomed in to kind of examine the hardware on the pieces that I were looking at, and I was okay with hairline scratches, but not okay with tarnish. So that's a big difference. So you can see here, no tarnish. And actually, like, no scratches to the visible eye either, like, really. Sometimes fingerprint smudges, but this hardware is in great condition, which tells me also that the previous owner either didn't use the bag very much or they stored it really well. They took care of it. Okay, and then we want to look at stickiness. There's two flaps here. This is the design, obviously, of the double flap, the classic flap. You don't want anything to be sticky. You don't want zippers to be sticky. No one ever uses this pocket because it doesn't do anything. It just goes, oh, you hear that? Did you hear that? There's stickiness in there. So I'm glad I put my hand in there. I actually have to like loosen it a little bit because humidity and moisture makes things sticky. So if it's like that, like what you just heard, and you can undo it quickly, put some tissue paper in there or air it out, fine. I store my bags with all baking soda and moisture absorbing beads in my closet. So I'm like obsessed because it gets pretty humid here. Is it sticky anywhere else? Is it sticky in particular here? Sometimes you'll see listings where the pockets here have gotten so sticky because of, you know, being stored in moisture for too long, that if you really look at the photos and zoom in, you'll see that the paint on the leather has basically rubbed off or gotten pulled off. And so, for example, if on this bag, that would mean the inside pockets were no longer this beautiful burgundy lining. It would just be like, I don't know, some weird color. So if you care about that, I did. So that's why I looked at those things. So stickiness, anything caused by moisture, poor storage, I would look at that. That's why I put tissue paper often. You want to just have to, you know, have the materials absorb the moisture, not have the leather get sticky. Then I look at quilting, not in this order, by the way. I'm just listing everything that I look at. Quilting. So for me, I wanted the quilting to be like still in good condition. I didn't mind it to be flat like this because there's beauty. In my eyes, there's beauty to vintage flat quilting, but I didn't want it to be like sucked in and dimpled. Just for me, some people love that look. It's very Parisian chic, very kind of casual, worn in, I don't care look. And that's the vibe for a lot of people. But I didn't want it to be dimpled. So as you can see, there's no real like severe dimpling happening anywhere. So that's just a personal preference. There's a little bit more, a tiny bit more in the back, probably because it presses from the body when it's worn. But this level of flattened quilting I'm very happy with. So look at the quilting depending on how you want it to be. If you're okay with it being dimpled and concave, if you're wanting it to be more flat like this, or do you want it to be puffy? Okay, and when I say puffy, let me show you. Like, this is a newer bag, and it's obviously it's caviar, and it's a totally different color. It's the beige clear. So we're not comparing apples to apples, but you can see here, and the newer bags are just generally puffier because of the way they stitched differently. So you can see it's a little bit puffier, and some people want that. Some people want super puffy. I don't really love super puffy, but it depends. So the quilting is one thing, and then what it comes with. I also looked at what it comes with. So remember, I really wanted the authenticity card. That was priority number 1 with what it comes with. And I didn't really care about the dust bag or the box as much. Now, it didn't come with this kind of dust bag because this is the newer ones. And by the way, they changed this too. They've changed the material. It's a little bit different. And they no longer have Coco's face on the inside. This is an illustration by Carl. So they changed it. But here's the thing. The beauty of the dust bags that the Chanel Classic flaps usually come with from the boutiques have this inner flap here, which is perfect for storing your chains, okay? Because you don't want your chains pressing down and denting your bag. However, because I didn't get one of those with this Preloved purchase, I did pick this one up from ZOOMONI. Now, ZOOMONI is my favorite place to go for organizer inserts. You guys probably know that already. But this is a really nice product that they made. I've had this for a couple years now. And it's perfect for the classic flaps. So it's beautiful, soft, micro suede. This is not sponsored. I'm just sharing. It's never sponsored. ZOOMONI code I always have down below in my description box. 20% off using my code for any order. And you just tuck this. So it's a slightly different design compared to the original Chanel dust bag, but it kind of tucks right in like that, out of the way. So I really like this. I use this all the time to store this bag. And I'm showing you this because if you want to get a vintage Chanel or a pre-loved Chanel bag and you're fussing over the dust bag, you can get something like this. You can put it in a different dust bag because the older Chanel dust bags don't have that flap. It's just like a one pocket little potato sack. So that's something to consider. And then I also look at the age of the bag, and I shared that. So 6 series. And so that makes it about 2000 to 2002 production. And so when I purchased this, it was about 20 years old, which is exactly what I was looking for because in my mind, it's 20 years or older that's vintage. I know nowadays, I think people say 10 years or older. I sometimes see people talk about their bags. It's like 4 or 5 years old, bought it pre-loved, but then they automatically call them vintage. And I'm like, just because you bought it pre-loved does not make it vintage. Vintage is like a longer stretch of time. Anyway. And then last but not least, I look at the return policy. So I did a whole video on Fashionphile's return policy and how it has changed quite a bit. So be sure to check out that video. But look at the return policy, because you don't want to be stuck holding a really expensive bag, receiving it and finding that it's not anywhere close to what you thought based on the photos, and then being basically stuck with it because there's no return option. You don't want that. So definitely look at the return option. If you're going to shop from places like eBay, make sure it has the authenticity guarantee. Make sure that you have safeguards in place. I think if you purchase with a credit card, depending on where you purchase from, your credit card will also add a layer of protection from fraud and things like that and inaccurate listings. But these are all the things that I look for. So authenticity, structure, symmetry, odors, stains, hardware, stitches. Oh, did I talk about the stitches? I think I forgot. I had it on my list. So I was examining all the stitching because the classic flap that I got from the boutique unfortunately had a pop stitch. It was a brand new one, pop stitch, and that's why I had to return that one. So I'm looking at all the stitching here, making sure that nothing is popped or loose. Something to consider. If it's just a little bit loose, I think there's a way very easily for it to be repaired. But if it's in bad condition, you know, it depends on if you want to deal with that. Now I do have some loose threads on my chain strap here. Let me see if I can show you. So right here. Now this, at the time, Fashionphile was very meticulous in photographing this and showing this on the listing. So I knew it was not a surprise. I think when it's not a surprise, it's just so much more, like, you can be agreeable to something like this when you knew it. You knew it was there and you still ordered it. So I knew this was there. I examined this closely. There's a little knot here. So this is like where the two pieces of leather come together, because they would fold it over and then double stitch it. So it's double stitched. This is not going to come undone, but the ends are just a little bit frayed and loose, just probably from rubbing on the shoulder and being worn for so many years. So I could, if I was brave enough, get a little lighter and just sort of burn off the edge here, but I'm not crazy. I'm not doing that. So I'm just living with it the way it is. But that's also what I would look at, like threading, stitching. Otherwise, it's good. So I think I named like 12 or 13 criteria that I look for, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy with this bag. It's my forever vintage, and I really do hope that this video, I know I flew through it, but I hope it will be helpful as you also go on your search if you happen to be looking for a vintage Chanel classic flap. My favorite resellers, outside of the big sites like Fashionphile, Rebag, etc., one is a good friend of mine. Her name is Elma, and she goes by The Guru Edit on Instagram. She has amazing bags. I bought my mom's bag from her. And then also Jazz from the Rouge Street Bags, and she's also amazing. I bought a couple bags from her in the past. Have since let them go because the color was not right. There was a red lambskin flap that was just too red for me. And then the jumbo, my jumbo single flap, I still have it and love it. I got that from Jazz. So I have personal experience from both of these ladies, and I have become friends with them through our, back and forth, and they have really good reviews. I recommend you check them out. And give this video a thumbs up if you found it to be helpful in any way, really. And subscribe to my channel if you enjoy this type of content. Thanks so much. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.